Welcome everyone to today's InfoBurst webinar. My name is Brian Baca. For those that don't know me, I'm the Product Support Manager here at Infosol, and today we'll be presenting our first in a ongoing series of InfoBurst webinars, creatively titled InfoBurst Webinar number 1. We might give those better titles in the future. So what we'll do here quickly is just go through the agenda and format of the webinar and what we'll be covering, and then how we're going to be engaging with all of you that are attending today towards the end of the session. So let's just quickly go through our agenda. It's short. I thought in this first webinar we'd kind of set the stage talking about what we want to do with you in these webinars and how they might take shape going forward. What I'm going to do here, and I'm going to do this a few times throughout the session, is switch over to the Infosol Help Desk. I assume most, if not all of you, are familiar with the Help Desk. This is how you interact with me in the InfoBurst team on a daily basis. And within the Help Desk, you're going to find a variety of resources, solutions, knowledge base, forums. And I will go back to this as often as I can to show you where to find things and that sort of thing. So as far as our webinar is concerned, under the forum section of the Help Desk, the Infosol Help Desk, you will see a new InfoBurst Webinars forum. And this first forum here just describes, what we're looking at in terms of format for these forums. And this hopefully will change and evolve based on your feedback and your participation. But in these webinars, this 1-hour session, our key focus is providing you ongoing education about InfoBurst, letting you know what InfoBurst does, how to do certain things. We'll go through simple and complex workflows. We'll talk about features that you may not be too familiar with. So the focus there being ongoing education for you as InfoBurst users. Our hope is that going forward, these webinars will be primarily presented by you, the users, and your solutions that you've achieved with InfoBurst, your insights, your stories about InfoBurst. I know there are a lot out there. We'll talk about how we'll do that. But you'll also be hearing from myself, other members of the InfoBurst team, and even the InfoBurst developers from time to time. We'll always save some time at the end of our webinar for questions, discussions, right? We can talk about topics related to what we presented in today's webinar, but we're not limited. Feel free to chime in with any of your InfoBurst questions or comments, and we'll do our best to address all of those during the session. From time to time, we'll be sharing our development roadmap. So looking ahead a bit, we hope to do this, at least for now, on a monthly basis, if not more often. In April's webinar, we will be presenting to you the roadmap for our upcoming Build 235, and we'll be announcing that webinar probably in the next week or two in terms of the date and time. And then we'll also be, whenever it's relevant, announcing upcoming events, things that you might be interested in related to InfoBurst and business objects. So actually, let's go back here. Before we continue, this forum is where we would like to hear from you. So if there are topics that you'd like to see covered, come into this forum, tell us what you want to see, and we'll get it into these webinars. If you'd like to present in one of these webinars, please let us know here, or reach out through any of our channels. You can hit us through Twitter. You can log a ticket in the help desk. Let us know. Don't be shy. We love hearing from the users. Users love hearing from users, and we'd like you to be a part of these webinars. So come in here, let us know what you'd like to present or what you want presented, and we'll get that into the agenda. Okay. All right, so next up in the agenda today, our education, if you will, our knowledge transfer how-to will be about the InfoBurst portal feature of InfoBurst, and I'll get into more detail in just a moment. We'll also take a look at our most recent build, the features release date for InfoBurst Build 234. For those of you that aren't aware of what that current build is and what's in it, we'll quickly recap that for you. We'll talk quickly about some of the upcoming events for InfoBurst users. And then at the end, we'll open things up to discussion. So the format of that will be you're submitting questions and comments through the questions panel on your GoToWebinar user interface there. So you'll just type in your question. Looks like a few of you have already managed to do that. If you got a question related to today's content, put it in there. Comments, anything that you'd like discussed towards the end. Because we have so many attendees registered today, we're not going to be opening up, at least on today's webinar, audio. That tends to present a lot of issues. So what we'll do, I've got a coworker of mine, Brianna, who's helping me moderate today. As your questions and comments come in, she'll be interacting with you, curating that feedback, and at the end, she'll be presenting those to me on your behalf, and I'll do my best to answer your questions and address your comments. Okay, so I think I've stepped on myself here. I've already talked about the format of the webinars, what to expect in these webinars, and just a little bit later I'll talk to you about how you can set up to automatically be alerted via email of an upcoming webinar. So let's get on to our how-to, and today we'll be talking about the InfoBurst portal. So let's just go through a few bullet points about the portal, and then we'll get right into a kind of a detailed workflow. So the InfoBurst portal was introduced back in build 232. That was 2 builds ago. And the primary focus of the portal, at least initially, is to allow InfoBurst users to deliver and host InfoBurst published content. Now, there are other portals that many of you utilize today. You will deliver your content back to the BI Launchpad, for example, maybe public folders, maybe user inboxes. A lot of you will deliver to SharePoint, and these are, these are popular portal destinations. But over the years, we have gotten more and more feedback and requests about the ability to natively host that content within InfoBurst. So that's what inspired this feature. A lot of it was based on your feedback. And what I'm going to show you in just a moment is the culmination of all that feedback and development effort. And what I'll say here is that it's in its infancy. What you see today is already evolving, and we will, elicit your feedback about what would make this portal more useful for you. One of the key features of the portal is automatic versioning, and we've seen a lot of users use very creative techniques in their deliveries to, let's say, network share or SharePoint or FTP, where you'll utilize a mixture of, macros, maybe date and time macros, to kind of achieve a versioning, if you will, right? Produce multiple reports over time to a destination and use those techniques for versioning. So one of the key features for the portal is automatic versioning. So as you deliver content to the portal over time, let's say you're running a schedule or a report every day or every week, as those new versions are created, they will automatically be created and itemized within the portal, and users can switch between versions natively within the portal. So, and then we'll talk about some of the enhancements that are coming for versioning as well. But that's one of the key features and an idea to remember as we look at the portal and how it works, because it is designed around versioning. You can utilize InfoBurst groups, InfoBurst group management, to control user access to content within the portal. And it's just like you're used to in the main InfoBurst user interface today. You'll set up folders that contain objects. You can create groups and add users, and then assign those groups access to specific folders and content. It will work the same way, or it does work the same way within the portal. Looking ahead just a bit, the main user interface of InfoBurst is a tool that's traditionally used by a subset of IT, administrators, power users, where the numbers might be, in the dozens at most, sometimes hundreds. But we acknowledge that, the idea of a portal is to host content for large communities of users, hundreds, maybe thousands of users. And the user management that today in InfoBurst isn't necessarily equipped for that. So what's coming in build 235 and is there today under a different name in build 234, should you decide to start using the portal, is what we're calling authentication source. The idea here is that you can establish a data source, a traditional data source in InfoBurst being a database table, a query against a table, or an Excel worksheet via a file list. And you could use that table to bulk manage your users, right? So you can have 1,000 users in a database table with all their attributes, and InfoBurst will automatically sync with that data source to add users to the system, right? So you're not having to add users and manage users within our user interface. You can bulk manage them in your data source. I'm not going to be talking about that specifically today, but the forums that I'll be referring to are going to talk to you about this feature as it evolves and how it's going to be implemented in Build 235. Finally, users, among other features, will have the ability to share content with other portal users, and I'll give you an example of that in our demo. So let's switch over to InfoBurst here, and before we jump into the actual portal, I thought I would instruct you on how the portal is initially configured. So as an administrator in InfoBurst, under the Settings tab, starting in Build 232, you will see a new panel here in Settings called InfoBurst Portal. We'll open that up. So configuration is pretty straightforward. It's basically 3 steps. We start with the portal root. It's not possible to deliver content like a PDF file to the portal root. You must create one or more root level folders. And it is these root level folders that you will deliver content to. So you could, drop files right into this accounting folder, for example, or you could potentially deliver content to subfolders within those root folders. Your choice. You can think of this just like any other folder delivery scenario in InfoBurst. So once you've created your root folder or folders, you'll then go about assigning group level access. Let me just yank this guy off here. So let's say, for example, we have our accounting group folder, and in InfoBurst we have a user group with users that represent accounting. So we'll select that group and say OK. So now when anyone from the accounting group logs into the portal, they're only going to see the accounting folder and any other folders to which they've been granted access. And then likewise here, I've granted access to the sales folder to the sales group. So very straightforward, traditional user access control using InfoBurst groups. When you go to create your or configure your portal for the first time, you'll notice this field here on the right, portal storage location, isn't grayed out, but does reference the default portal path. So when you generate and deliver content to the portal, all the files that you're generating are actually stored on disk. And by default, they're going to be stored in the InfoBurst application root folder under _portal. If you set this up and make no changes, that's where InfoBurst is going to store all this content. At setup time, you do have the option to define your own path. So you might have another directory on the C partition. Maybe you have a data partition like an E partition where you'd like to store these files. You can define that path here at setup time. Now, should you, set this up with a path that you want to change later, right? Let's say we started out in the application root, but now we want to move all that stuff and have it stored, let's say, on the E partition. That's not something you'll be able to do from the user interface because it can be a fairly lengthy process. So that can be done, and it can be done via a utility that exists in the InfoBurst application root. There are instructions within our documentation that explain how to do this, but essentially you'll log into the server as an administrator and run this simple utility that will relocate or redefine the storage path and relocate all of your files to that new storage location. So that's the setup of the portal. At this point, you're now ready to start delivering content to the InfoBurst portal. So let's do that. We'll create a simple delivery here. So we'll create a new burst. Just call this portal demo. And to it, we'll add a document. Now, this is traditional InfoBurst. So, whatever report type you're working with, Webby, Crystal, Desky, SSRS, whatever you've got are candidates for delivery to the portal. So let's select a Webby report here, performance by city. And let's just create a simple delivery. So I'm going to add a new delivery. And in 232 and later, you would have noticed that the default destination is now InfoBurst Portal. Obviously, you can choose other destinations, but by default, InfoBurst Portal is your selection. So we start with the destination path. And just a reminder, anywhere you see the M icon means that this field supports InfoBurst macros, and we'll actually use one here in just a moment. So let's send this to our sales group folder. And we'll send this, we want to create, let's say create a subfolder with the name of our burst. We'll just leverage our burst macro. And so here in our macro builder, I'll add the burst macro to the end of that path. So at runtime, InfoBurst will create a subfolder called InfoBurst Portal, and in it, it will create this portal content. The next field is what's called the group name, and I will define this for you now, and I'll give you a better example of it once we log into the portal. InfoBurst isn't just delivering files to folders in the portal. Remember, what we're doing here is hosting versioned content, right? So what we do when we deliver content to the portal is we create what we call a content group, right? So that content group might represent, PDF files from this report, or if I'm bursting, maybe it represents, PDF files for city, New York, or something like that. So this concept of the group name is for organization purposes, so organizing around the versions, and you have to create a group name. By default, InfoBurst will populate the doc name macro, which will replace or create a group name with the name of the source document. In this case, it's called Performance by City. But you have control over the group name using either a static value or a combination of InfoBurst macros. By default, InfoBurst will version the content you deliver to the portal, and the default retention setting is 30 versions. You can change that to whatever value you choose, or you can simply check the box to say, keep all versions, don't delete anything. And then finally here on the right, in certain circumstances, you can define a file name. As I'll show you in a moment, there are certain formats that are native to the portal that can be viewed natively in the portal, but there are also file types, static file types that you could name just like you would files that you're delivering to any other InfoBurst destination using static text, macros, or a mixture of both. So that's the portal destination and its options. And let's talk quickly about formats. So any file type that InfoBurst generates, you can deliver it to the portal. However, there are certain formats that are native to the portal, meaning when you view them in the portal, they are rendered right there in your browser versus having to download the files and view them in their native application. Those formats are PDF, PNG, and the HTML format. Any other files that you deliver to the portal, let's say text or Excel, will be rendered for the user in a list, just a traditional list of files, and that user can then download those to their workstation and open them in their text editor or in Excel. These formats don't render within the portal, but the formats I mentioned earlier do. And really the recommended format for the portal is HTML, and you'll see in a moment how that renders quite nicely via the browser. So we'll select HTML here and add our delivery. Now for time purposes, I ran this burst before the webinar, so I'll just show you the result. So once we've delivered content to the portal, now we move on to accessing the portal. So what I'll do here is put in the portal address, and it's simply InfoBurst server name, port 8551/portal will get you to the portal. Now if you're using some sort of alternate DNS name, you'd enter just your traditional InfoBurst server address /portal will get you to this log on screen. Now this is InfoBurst, so if you are an InfoBurst user who has enabled Windows authentication, then if that user exists in InfoBurst, they will be automatically logged into the portal. They won't be presented with this username and password field. Mine is traditional InfoBurst authentication, so I have to log in. Now I'm logging in as Brian. I'm an administrator, so I see everything in the portal. But if I had signed in as a user in one of these groups, I would only see the content that's been made available to me. So let's start with the sample content that we just delivered. So here in my sales group folder, here is the folder that InfoBurst created called Portal Demo. And within it, InfoBurst has created this content group that I mentioned earlier. So I'll talk about the content group in here in just a moment. Let's for now just look at the content that was generated. So let's drill into this content group, and you can see here, right, this is obviously a Webby report. It's got tables, it's got charts. This is the HTML format that I mentioned earlier, right? So InfoBurst extracts that HTML from business objects, and then it renders it in the portal. So, you know, in terms of a portal viewing experience, like I said, this is kind of the recommended format, but you can deliver any format you choose. If you're delivering a tabbed report like Webby to the portal, and there are multiple report tabs, you'll see those rendered on the left here under content. So you can see this Webby report has a summary tab, which is what we see here, a detail tab, and a margin versus revenue tab. And we can switch between those as a user. Now, we've just delivered the first version of this report, so we don't see a version history here. I'll show you that in just a moment. Now, while we're here, I mentioned earlier that portal users will have the ability to share content with other portal users. And they would do that by drilling into and viewing the content they're interested in, right? So here we're in our performance by city report. And up on the top right here, you see this little arrow icon. If I click that as a user, I can put in somebody's email address, put in a custom message, and hit share. This functions exactly like the email notification mechanism that you're familiar with in deliveries today. So the user will get an email with a custom message, and they'll get a content link in that email, where if they click it and they're already authenticated to the portal, they will be taken right to that piece of content in the portal. They won't have to go looking for it in folders and lists, right? It'll take them straight in. If they're not authenticated, all they need to do is authenticate, and then they're taken straight to that content. So users can share with other users. So let's back up then and look at some other content that we've delivered to the portal. Let's go in here to this performance by state folder. And this is a better example of the use of the content group, as we call it. So what we've done with this performance by state report is, first of all, it was bursted, right? So we bursted for 2 states, California and New York, but then we also produced these bursted reports in multiple formats. And you can see here, these were produced in HTML format, these were produced in PDF. So we group around the format for versioning purposes, right? So here we have California in HTML, and we can see that we have a number of versions. So that's the concept of the content group. So let's talk about the content group itself. So when we're looking at a content group within the portal, we have a few key indicators, right? First of all, we have, we can identify the format by this icon, right? This is HTML. On the right-hand side here, we have this little new icon when InfoBurst detects that you as a user have content in the group that you haven't yet viewed. So that is tracked by the InfoBurst platform. So as a user, it's gonna record, or excuse me, when a user consumes content, it's gonna record that interaction, which by the way you can report on using our InfoBurst reporting tools, and it's gonna know whether or not the user has new content. So this is their indication that they've got something new waiting for them. We can see the number of total versions that have been produced for this content group. So we've got 8 versions of this report. And then we're also shown the most recent and the oldest versions, right? So once we drill in, again, this is like the example before. This is a Webby report. Again, this has multiple report tabs, and we can browse between those, right? Then on the bottom here, we have our list of versions. So the user simply clicks on the desired version to view that content. You'll notice if you've built up a version history in the portal, once we get to a certain number of versions, this will actually render as a drop-down menu that you can select from. Okay, let's back up then. So within this folder, we also have a content group for PDF content. So we produced this same report. Let's come over here to the New York report in PDF format. And PDF is the other format that renders natively in the portal. So we're using a renderer within the browser, right? And you'll recognize this if you've consumed PDF content in your browser. And within that, you have native PDF tools. So the ability to either download the PDF file, print the file, or browse between the PDF bookmarks are all here in this native ribbon. And it might look subtly different depending on the browser that you're using, but it's got all the same tools. And again, we have the versions on the left. Now, because we're not working with that HTML format, we don't have access to the individual report tabs. That's exclusive to HTML. Here we can browse between those report tabs using the traditional PDF bookmarks. Let's back up here then and look at a few other formats. So we've looked at the HTML format, the PDF format that render natively in the portal. If we go back up to the portal home and on our accounting group folder, here's an example of a non-native format, I'll call it, a static file that we can deliver. So like I said, any format, text, Excel, native files like WID files you can deliver. It's just that you won't be able to view them natively in the portal. However, here for this performance by city report, if I drill into the content group, we can see our list of files, right? We can deliver these files over time. Versions will be created just like the native content. The key here is we need to download these files and open them in their respective applications like Excel. So here I could simply say I want to download the Los Angeles report. I can either click on the link or check the box and hit this button, or if I want to download multiple versions, let's say I want this Los Angeles version and I'd also like the San Francisco and Miami version. So I've got 3 different Excel files selected. When I click the button, InfoBurst will automatically zip these files and download the zip to your desktop. And this would apply to any static format, Excel, like I said, Excel, text, other static formats. In addition to the traditional files that we deliver, if you work with dashboarding tools like Excelsius, you can also deliver those dashboards to the portal and they will render natively. So here I have, I say Excelsius, SAP dashboards. This is an SAP dashboard that I delivered to the portal as a Swift file, and it renders and is interactive right here from the portal. Okay, let's go back to our portal home. In addition to viewing the content, there are a few other features that I'd highlight. First of all, obviously a native search. And it's not just a keyword search, it's a contextual search. So for example, if I type in, let's say, New York, you'll notice that there are either content groups or files with the name New York in them. So we have 2 different content groups here where in this case, the actual content group name is the name New York. And these will obviously show up in a search. However, if you're bursting, right, let's say you're bursting by city, right, InfoBurst knows that context because it did the bursting, it produced the files, and it records that metadata in the portal so that here we have an Excel file that is neither named for city New York nor is the content group name for that city, but InfoBurst knows that there's New York data in the report, so it returns that to you as a result as well. Now let's go back here. So obviously, you may be building up, large libraries of content in the portal. So there's also a favorites feature. So if we come in here, and let's just say there's a specific group of content that we'd like to keep an eye on or favorite. As a user, I can come up here, and on the top right, you've got this little pencil icon. If you click that, this is going to toggle these controls. And an end user of the portal won't see this delete icon. That's administrators only. But they will see this little favorite button. So let's say I want to keep an eye on the California PDF content group, meaning I want to be able to quickly access it and I want to know when new content has been delivered to it or generated in it. I simply click the favorite icon, and then as I log into the portal on the left, if I select this favorite menu, I will be rendered any of the pieces of content that I've clicked favorite on, and then I can come back at a later time and simply unfavorite that if I want it off the list. In terms of content management in the portal, as an administrator, if there's a piece of content that I'd like to delete, I can come into the portal. So here, let's say I want to get rid of this portal demo and everything in it. I'll just toggle that button again, and as an administrator, I have this delete icon. I'll get a dialog, say, yep, I want to get rid of that, and it's gone. We can turn that off. Okay, so that's the portal. What I'd like to do now is just point out to you a few resources that you might use if you want to start testing the portal, or even using the portal. So within the InfoSol Help Desk, there are two different resources that I would refer you to. First are our tutorials. So let's go back to the Help Desk. So tutorials are located under Solutions. And if you scroll down, there is a solution section called Tutorials. And this is one long list of articles. But if we come down here, there are a series of 4 articles that will take you through setup to delivery to consumption in the portal, just like I showed you. So it starts with this Managing the InfoBurst Portal article. Each of these articles is going to have a short description of what you're doing, and it will also include a video that's going to walk you right through the setup steps, the delivery steps, and the consumption steps as well. And in each of these articles, you'll see reference the other related articles. So if you start here in Managing the InfoBurst Portal, we're also going to refer you to setting up a delivery to the portal. There's an article that describes portal delivery scenarios. I would recommend you read that because there's some really interesting things you can do as it regards naming and managing these content groups. And then finally, the end user experience, which is using the portal. So hopefully you'll find those useful. And then the other resource I refer you to is the InfoBurst Portal Forum. So if we go over here to the Forum section, you'll find this one under the forum titled From the InfoBurst Team. And for those of you that aren't aware, this is a forum where the InfoBurst developers and support staff will share with you guys what we're working on, right? Features that we have in development, things that we're thinking about, engaging you on these features, letting you know how they're progressing, gathering your feedback about them. So if we go in here, there is a forum dedicated to the portal. And here you'll find from inception, right, this is when we first started thinking about the portal, we will try to share this information with you, how these features are developing, you know, how we're incorporating your feedback. So I encourage you to come in here and read this forum, but more importantly, we'd like to gather your feedback, right? So use these forums to come in and tell us, you know, your experience with the InfoBurst portal, you know, what would make it more valuable to you? What would you like to see changed? We're keen on that feedback. Everything that you see in that portal today is a direct result of feedback that we got from our users. So we would like to see it evolve based on what our InfoBurst users need from it. Okay. Let's quickly review then, now that we're done with the portal, let's talk about the current build of InfoBurst, which is InfoBurst build 234. So we're going to go back into the help desk and let's go back to the forums. So again, for those of you that aren't aware, we announce and publish information about our builds under the forums under the What's New with InfoBurst forum. So we go in here, you can see basically release notes on every general release build, every fix pack to those general releases that we've issued. And our current build is 234. And within this, you can get all the information you need about, you know, when these builds are released, build information, overviews and recommendations, right? What to do to prepare to do an update, how to back up, how to test, any notes that we need you to be aware of, any issues. And then we'll go on to talk about features. So in build 234, we enhanced our OData feed offerings. I'm not going to get into this today, but if you're interested, you can come in here or just go into the help desk and search OData, and you'll see plenty of results talking about our new features related to reporting over OData from the InfoBurst platform. And we'll be covering this as a topic in a future webinar for sure. We also added, for those Tableau users, we've added a new platform type, which is Tableau Server, and this will function like any traditional platform, like a business objects platform or a SharePoint platform. And then finally, there was an interesting feature introduced called Content API URL. The short version of this is it gives you the ability to, as part of a burst delivery, so let's say you have a Webby report, right, and you're going to produce PDF content from a Webby report and send it to someone. and you have PDF content in some other system completely unrelated to business objects, that you'd like to take that PDF content out of that system and include it alongside your Webby PDF content. So this feature allows you to do that by giving you a hook in the burst to reach out to some other system through a RESTful endpoint. Let's say you have an invoicing system. You can reach into that invoicing system, and using certain arguments, you can go in there and actually pluck out an invoice for, let's say, a customer and merge that right into the PDF from the Webby report and deliver that to your end user. And again, if you're interested in that feature, you can learn more about it by drilling into this article or just go in and search Content API URL. And we'll likely be covering this feature as well because I think it's worth going into some detail on it. And then, as is any release document or article, you'll see a list of all the issues that we've resolved in that particular build. So that's build 234, and we are working on putting the finishing touches on a fix pack 1 for build 234, and you can probably expect that in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be announcing that when it's released. Okay, so in terms of events, the big event that's coming up is the InfoBurst track, or what's called the InfoBurst Experience, at the annual InfoSol Business Intelligence Seminar, or IBIS. So this year's IBIS 2018 is in Carlsbad, California, and that's June 18th to the 20th. I know a lot of you have had the opportunity to attend IBIS, so you have a good sense of what this conference is all about. InfoBurst is just one track of multiple tracks at this conference, which is focused on the business objects community. Generally, IBIS offers hands-on business objects training, seminars with industry experts, users of business objects, and then within that we have our own 3-day track, which is all about InfoBurst. For those of you that attended, right, it's a really nice mix of user case studies. We do a lot of knowledge transfer, going really deep into certain features. Lots of roundtable discussions. This is always a really nice venue for users. So if you have the ability and the opportunity, I do encourage you to attend. This is we've been doing this now for maybe at least the InfoBurst part 7 or 8 years, and it's gotten better every year. We have a bigger crowd every year, and this is a really nice way for those users to get together. If you're interested, it's just attendibis.com. We'll give you all the information about the event, registration information, and things like that. I just wanted to quickly remind you of some of the resources that you have available in the InfoSol Help Desk, ways that you can stay informed. So I want to focus specifically on the forum section of the Help Desk and the announcements forum. And actually this applies to any forum in the help desk. As a user, when you're logged in and you're viewing a forum, you'll have a little follow button here on the right. I'm not logged in, but you'll see that button on your end. If you would like to receive automatic email updates when a new topic is added to a forum or a new post is added to the forum, add yourself as a follower and you'll get those alerts from the system automatically. It's an opt-in system. If you're going to follow any forum, of which there are many, I recommend the announcements forum, because we're going to use this to communicate with you key information, specifically build releases, fix pack releases, and announcements of key events like our webinars, the IBIS conference, stuff like that. So we'll limit this forum to that, but this is the way that you can stay informed and stay up to date on InfoBurst. But there are a variety of other forums that you might be interested in following. The one that I'd recommend is the InfoBurst Webinars. If you like this webinar and you'd like to attend or maybe participate in future webinars, make yourself a follower of that forum. And then any other subject area that you're interested in, release notes, the development forum, you can add yourself as a follower on any of these. And you can remove yourself if you choose to stop getting that content. It's an opt-in, opt-out system. Okay, with that, I'd like to open it up to your questions and discussion. So Brianna, just
yeah, we've had a few questions come in, Brian. The first two on the portal. So the first question is, are deleted versions in the InfoBurst portal actually deleted, or are they soft deleted? And this person asked because they're wondering if they can still take, if they still take space after they're purged.
No, I might actually be able to show you. I wasn't planning on this, but let's just see if we can do it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually on my InfoBurst server. So what we'll do, my portal storage location is the default path, which is in the InfoBurst application root. So let's go right into see program files, infosol, InfoBurst platform. So here's the default location, and that's the one I'm using. And if we drill into this, you'll see a cryptic list of folders. So these are all just reference IDs to that are used in our repository to reference these files. And within each one of these, you can actually drill in and see the content, right? So here's a PDF file that's been produced and delivered. If you delete a piece of content in the portal, that is a hard deletion. That this file and folder will get deleted from this storage location. It's gone, right? And I think the question was, even if you delete it, does it remain? And the answer is no. What I'd add to that, since it was kind of related to versioning, among the enhancements coming in build 235, one of our users requested the ability to delete specific versions. So if we come back in here, let's say, for example, on March the 2nd, this report was generated but contained no data. So I don't want users to see that. I just want to get rid of it. And build 235, the administrator will have the ability to delete a specific version or specific versions that we've stored in history.
Back. All right, thanks, Brian. Oh, I think your audio cut out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Did you miss any of what I said? Do I need to repeat anything?
Just that last little bit. You only cut out for about 5 seconds.
Yeah, like I was just saying, you will have the ability as an administrator to remove specific versions for a given content group. But back to the original question, those files are, when you delete them, they're gone. But if you're storing files on disk wherever you choose to store them, that gives you the opportunity to perform a regular backup of those files or that partition, right? So that's within your control.
Great. Well, the other InfoBurst portal question is if they can set up the InfoBurst portal storage on a different server other than the one used for InfoBurst itself.
So you can reference a UNC path, and that might be a local path. That might be a remote path. I would say, just generally, the recommendation would be store them locally, because if you start storing those files on a remote server, you could run into obvious network performance issues. You can test it, right? So you can set up your portal with a UNC path. Now the key here is that the path that you define must be accessible by the Windows account that you've assigned to run the InfoBurst service. It won't work if you don't do that, right? So that Windows user is the one that InfoBurst is going to leverage to talk over the network, and it's going to have read and write access on that destination. So you could set up your portal pointing to that remote path and just try it out. See if it works for you, see if performance is an issue. If it is, you always have the option to go in and use that utility to move that portal content from its source destination to some other destination on the local server. So I'll leave that to you to test. If you run into some issues, by all means, engage us on the help desk, open a ticket. We'll work with you on that. And if you're running into an issue, we'll make it work. But try it. See how it works for you in your networking environment. Bree, are you there? Hey, Brianna, can you hear me? Okay, everyone, my apologies. I thought my issues were my end, the audio issues. It turns out Brianna's having audio issues in her location. So, Brianna, can you just let me know? Let's see here. I want to make sure that you all can still hear me, given that Brianna is no longer connected. Would any one of you mind just submitting a new question in the questions panel, just to let me know you're still there, you can hear me. Okay, Alan Williams says, I can hear you. Thank you, Al. I appreciate that, so you all can still hear me. So, all right, I'll go through the next question. So the next question is, I see Excelsius dashboards are supported. How about Tableau? That is a really interesting question. What I can say is that this is something that we are actively looking at. I can't guarantee it's something that we will deliver, but I will suggest that this is something that we're looking at, and I think is something that will eventually be supported in the portal. And what its user is talking about is the ability to natively consume Tableau visualizations, Tableau dashboards in our portal. So for that user and any other user that's interested, as we make these decisions and start that development, we're going to keep you informed through that portal forum. So go into the forums under from the InfoBurst team, InfoBurst portal forum, make yourself a follower, and we'll be updating you. You'll see what we're doing, and more importantly, you can feed back to us, right? As we start developing these features, if there's a specific idea you have about like consuming Tableau in the portal, it would be great to hear from you. So that is the last question on my list. Does anyone else have any other questions they'd like to submit before we end today? Okay. As always, these webinars are not the only way that you can contact us. Please, if you've got questions about this presentation, InfoBurst in general, support issues, you know where to go. Log into the InfoSol help desk, open a ticket. We'll get right back to you. We will be announcing the second InfoBurst webinar in the coming weeks. It is probably going to be scheduled first or second week of April, and we already have one of our InfoBurst users who's volunteered to present one of their solutions to you. So when we make that announcement, we'll be giving you, an agenda about the type of the type of topics that will be covered in that second webinar. Just a reminder, if you would like to review this webinar at a future date, or maybe you have one of your fellow InfoBurst users or colleagues that you'd like to share this webinar with, later today we'll be publishing a video of this webinar in the InfoBurst webinar forum for this specific webinar number 1. So if you open up that forum, you'll see a response in that forum, which is a recording of today's session. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone that signed up and attended today's webinar. We're really excited to start engaging our InfoBurst users on a regular basis. We benefit tremendously from it. We love hearing your questions and hearing your feedback. So we hope many good things are coming through these webinars. So again, thank you very much, and I wish you all a good day. Bye-bye.